Hey guys, Eli here from Mile High Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about Best Minds from Jonathan Rosen. 25 years ago, Yale Law School graduate Michael Lauder killed his pregnant girlfriend, Caroline Costello. Michael had schizophrenia, but the former dean of Yale Law School told the New York Times years earlier that Michael had, quote, conquered his mental illness, quote, extraordinarily well. In fact, Michael signed a multi-million-dollar book deal to tell his inspiring story, which was supposed to be turned into a movie featuring Brad Pitt. So, what went wrong? In Best Minds, Jonathan Rosen helps answer some of our biggest questions, providing a compassionate and intimate telling of his lifelong friendship with Michael. Rosen and Michael were best friends, but their relationship was inherently unequal. Michael, more than anyone else, had his shit together. Michael knew what he wanted to do with his life, got a top tier job after an Ivy League school, and never had trouble with girls. Rosen idolized Michael, describing himself as, quote, always the tortoise to Michael's hare. Readers find themselves in Rosen's shoes, and at first, it is difficult to see Michael as anything other than an incredible human. But even as Rosen is blind to the red flags, Michael's flaws slowly leak out. After Rosen won the editor-in-chief job at his high school yearbook, Michael quit, claiming that the organization wasn't important to him. In college, Michael avoided Rosen, believing he was too mature, too smart to continue the friendship. Michael was far from perfect, and he was a cocky jerk long before his symptoms arose. In retrospect, other indications of Michael's illness became subtly clear. For instance, Michael left his prestigious job at Bain to pursue creative interests. At the time, this seemed to indicate that Michael had his life together, not that it was falling apart. Only much later do we sense that something is seriously wrong. In introducing Michael's condition, Rosen nonchalantly describes worrying incidents. For example, we learn that Michael began taking a different route each time he drove home because he believed he was being followed or spied on. Although Michael's illness appeared to escalate slowly, we suddenly learn midway through the book that he was admitted to a mental hospital. Apparently, Michael came to believe that his parents were Nazis and began carrying a knife in self-defense. Until that point, the book successfully subverts expectations, so that even if readers know what's coming later, they're blindsided when Michael's life finally rears off course due to his symptoms. Like Rosen, we are shocked that a serious mental disability could destroy the life of someone with so much promise. Michael's treatment was extensive, and he eventually moved out of the hospital and into a transitional facility, maybe too soon. His doctor suggested a career as a Macy's cashier, arguing that the job is very respectable for someone with such a serious mental illness. Michael instead went with his backup option, Yale Law School. When Guido Calabresi, the school's legendary dean, heard of Michael's condition, he gave an iconic response, quote, if you were here and your problem or illness was that you needed a wheelchair and a ramp, there would be a wheelchair and a ramp. It isn't so easy to do, but I will be your wheelchair and ramp. Calabresi would ensure that any Yale student, no matter their disability, would get the tools they need to succeed. On paper, Michael's life was a huge success. After Michael's graduation, Yale funded a research position for him, and thanks to Calabresi's support, Michael was able to secure a glowing New York Times profile, which led to a book deal and a potential movie where Brad Pitt would portray him on screen. From the outside, the story was simple and heartwarming. Michael was successful despite his serious and purportedly debilitating condition. But under the hood, not all was well. In one interview, a journalist asked Michael how he managed to triumph over schizophrenia. Michael undermined the very premise of the question. He had not conquered schizophrenia. Every day, he had to face his literal demons. At Yale, he woke up every morning believing that his bed was on fire, and he frequently suspected that his loved ones had been replaced by imposters. Either the medications weren't helping, or potentially he was not taking them at all. The contrast between Michael, the perfect student, and Michael, the seriously sick man, is stark. We want to believe the story sold to us by the New York Times that Michael could truly live a normal life and accomplish his goals. We do so only because Michael's life had so much promise, and because many of us want to believe the myth of meritocracy, that no matter the disabilities, those that work the hardest will reach their goals. Rosen expertly places us in the same position as many others in his life, dismissing clear signs of distress and illness because we want him to succeed so badly. Like Professors Fiss and Calabresi, we overlook the warning signs because we're afraid of the greater truths. Maybe Michael can't complete the same work as his peers. Maybe Michael can't be trusted to decide when he needs treatment, and maybe Michael is dangerous. And the book raises another difficult question. Would we be nearly as sympathetic, as shocked, or as interested in Rosen's book if it described the life of an average person with schizophrenia? I don't think so. Similarly situated individuals without Michael's promise and strong support system don't get New York Times articles written about them, either to mark their success nor their downfall. Michael's story attracts attention not only because it is scandalous, but because it appears uniquely heartbreaking. But the other million Americans with the same illness have not received comparable coverage, attention, or affection. One of the things Best Minds does best is blending in a biting, sarcastic, and sometimes even humorous critique of America's policies and cultural approaches to mental illness. I don't agree with all the subtext, but Rosen's writing is deeply thought-provoking. For example, Rosen describes how New York only allows involuntary commitment of individuals once they become a harm to themselves or others. Michael never met this criterion, so the state turned a blind eye to his condition. Rosen raises the serious question of when involuntary commitment is appropriate. As a civil libertarian, I've always believed that the standard should be danger to yourself or others. But after reading Rosen's book, I'm thinking that either the standard is incorrect or maybe it should be interpreted differently. And regardless, the support we give people should be significant once they meet the standard. Rosen's book is particularly effective because he makes the arguments without lecturing us or sounding ideological. Instead, we see how Michael's promising life came to a sharp downward turn, and Rosen reminds us of the frequent instances where Michael could have been rescued. The book is very powerful for other reasons as well. For example, Rosen highlights how people in Michael's life overlooked the severity of his condition. They did so with good intentions. They didn't want Michael's opportunities to be constrained by his symptoms. But the unintended consequence was that Michael's treatment took a back seat. Our culture wanted to treat Michael as if he was normal, setting the same expectations for him as someone without mental illness, when instead he needed significant support. Rosen makes clear that Michael's illness was not solely responsible for his downfall, but that America's mental health laws and broader culture left people like Michael behind. Rosen also shows the beautiful love that Herbert Lauder, Michael's father and a college professor, had for his son. Michael's paranoia extended to his parents, whom he at times believed were Nazis and imposters. Still, Herbert fought tirelessly for Michael. Herbert was the only one who could successfully convince Michael to seek out care voluntarily and ensure that Michael had access to health care. When everyone's expectations for Michael were low, Herbert most strongly saw a successful life for Michael, where he could have a family and a strong career. And when Michael was in crisis, Herbert called every day to reassure him that the hallucinations were fabrications. Despite the book's central tragedy, Herbert's compassion for his son was a beautiful and tragic reminder that the most loving family may not be a panacea for someone left behind by systemic failure. Best Minds gives Michael's story the serious depth it deserves and provides important context for Costello's tragic killing. It expertly places a reader into the shoes of Michael's friend, through which we see his incredible promise. At the same time, Rosen persuasively argues that Michael's story was not inevitable, but a product of our culture and system. Best Minds is worth reading not only for its excellent narrative and insightful analysis of our country's mental health crisis, but for its heartwarming display of compassion. In the same book that describes America's systematic flaws, it is encouraging to see a powerful display of humanity, optimism, and compassion we can offer one another. This book is rated 5 out of 5. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave any comments about your thoughts. Thanks.